Got it.
Good afternoon. How are you today, Carlos?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me to have an interview on the podcast today. I'm looking forward to hearing more about you and your family.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah,
Sharing my
so tell
sharing
me,
my story. Yeah.
yeah,
What are
please tell
things?
me a little bit about your family in general.
So I have my wife Jezebel, and I have three kids. We have three beautiful kids. Samantha, 14 years old. We have a Carlos, 12 years old, and Leonardo, who's 8. So that's our nuclear family, and then we live in sunny San Diego, California, and here we have a wider family nest with cousins and other family members, and so it's a very nice environment for them to grow up in.
Yeah, I love San Diego. So did you guys move there to have more family support, or have you been there for a while?
We've been there. I grew up here. I'm from Mexico originally. We emigrated when I was 13, and we both immigrated when we were 13. And I met my wife in middle school, in fact. And here's where I finished my middle school, my high school, and then I ended up in Boston for my college years, and then I ended up coming back and then married my wife after that. So this is my hometown.
Are you guys middle school sweethearts?
Middle school sweethearts. Well,
Oh,
we were actually sweethearts in high school later in my last
yeah.
year in high school, but we've known each other for a long time.
Well, that's cool. Cool. You guys seem like you have a great marriage, which is important when you have
Yes.
kids with special needs, have that strong
Oh,
relationship.
yes. I
And
think it's very important.
yes, absolutely. To prioritize that for sure.
Mhm.
So, which your two of your kids have special needs. Can you go into a little bit more detail on what those are?
Yes, I have my older son Carlos. He has a rare disease as well. It's called polystotic fibrous dysplasia. That one is not hereditary. He can't pass it along to his own kids. It's just a random lack of a gene that mutated during the process of pregnancy, and that particular disease, what it does is it we're constantly losing bone and generating new bone. And in this case, wherever it activates in his bones, that new bone that gets created is fibrous bone. It's like chalky bone, so it's easy to break. They consider it little tumors in his body. He has it primarily in his femurs and in his right arm. It's never spread, or it's not in his back, in his spinal cord. It's not in his cranium. Typically, wherever it is, it'll typically stay there. So we've done the research, and it's located to a specific location in his body. And then I have an 8-year-old son, Leo, who has Pelizaeus-Merzbacher disease, and that one is a little more complicated because that one, it is hereditary. That is, boys have a 50% chance of getting that disease. It's an X-linked recessive gene that's passed through typically through the mothers, who could be 50%. They could be carriers of a generic of a PLP1 gene, a specific genetic condition. And then Leo, it just happened to be one of my two boys that happens to have the gene, so he is not able to talk or to walk, and he's wheelchair bound. And there's many other things that would happen during his time that he gets to hopefully live a life, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more.
Definitely. How do each of the diagnoses affect the kids, like on a day-to-day basis?
Leo is young. He doesn't. I mean, obviously, in the things that he can do, it affects him. Whether he can't. There's a sense of independence that he doesn't have, like the other, like his siblings. I mean, can't go running around the house and opening doors and going outside to play outside with friends, and so he needs to always be watched by an adult. But he himself, at least at this age, he doesn't necessarily notice that's his normal, being on a wheelchair now and moving around the house and creating havoc around the house, seeing what he can grab and throw, and and
Yes.
play, and so he makes himself noticed. And for Carlos is mostly obviously can't do contact sports because his bones can break, so can't walk necessarily long distances because his bones do get tired, and he has I can explain that later, but he has metal rods in his legs, and so those obviously affect him with temperature changes in the weather, because they expand and then contract. But other than that, he's fully, I mean, fully integrated into school, has friends, and plays games, and like any other kid, except that the sports side is the one that's lacking for him. But he makes it up on in other ways. I've had him in swimming classes and competitions for a while, so he does that, and so we try to balance. You need to have a life. It can't be just surviving, right? When you have kids with special needs, you need to have a life. You need to make sure that they live, even though yes, you have all of this conditions that are part of your daily life, but you sort of adapt to that, your life to that, and that necessarily doesn't become your first thing. When I think about my kids, I think about my kids as happy kids, as they have their goals and things that they want to do, and I encourage them, and so I try to focus on that as much as
Yeah,
possible.
definitely well said. I think that's a great way to explain it, and just adapting to the new normal, and then
Uh-huh.
trying to live as fully as possible. And also, you have another daughter. How
Mm-hmm.
does she deal with having, the two brothers? Does that just become normal for her? Does she struggle with that?
It is very normal, I think, for her now. It is I would say, for example, during the pandemic, I would say it's something that has we've been really very, very since Leo is 8 years old, can get a vaccine, and his
Mhm.
immune system is compromised. So we try to keep him as safe as possible, which means us keeping ourselves safe. So we haven't yet been on a vacation, for example, as a family in it's going to be almost 2 years. And those are the things that for her is like, why can we go on a vacation like other people? Hey, well, right now we gotta until all the data and everything is well known. We gotta
Mhm.
keep ourselves safe for your brother's sake. So those are the kinds of things that she would bring up. Other than that, she's very caring, very loving with his brothers. She doesn't want to see them hurt. It pains them when they go to the hospital,
Mhm.
and so I'm sure that's we're it's forced her to be more mature earlier than otherwise would be, right? And also seeing other kids outside with special needs. I mean, she's doesn't feel as strange, right, to seeing other kids with special needs. Quite the contrary, she feels like there's a connection with
Mhm.
them or other families, and I see that tender, loving care for her siblings and then others. So that's hopefully will carry on in her life as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, you told me a little bit about the diagnoses all coming at once. Do you want to tell the story of how that came to
Ugh.
be?
Yeah, I think I would say there's a before and an after.
Mhm.
2013 and before, our lives was one story. We raising kids. We had no um, uh, we're hungry for life. We were just doing carefree. We ambitious and looking for focused on very work driven. And then 2013, that's when Leo is born, and that's when everything sort of started changing for us. So I'll expand a lot of that story. So Leo was born, and he had no like our other two birds. Nothing strange. No strider.
Mhm.
Other than maybe lower weight than her siblings, nothing else was strange. He started breastfeeding immediately. Nothing would seem different. The only thing is that he failed a hearing test. That's where it all started. So he failed a hearing test. That's kind of strange. And then the doctors changed the machine. They said, okay, let's try it again the next morning. This machine also failed another test on some other kid, and then that other kid, they brought a new machine. That kid passed. They brought it to my child, and it failed again. And so they found that strange. And so that led to more appointments afterwards, after his birth, days later, to be looked at by experts, ENTs. and he ended up him being diagnosed with something called ANSD, auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder. So that's sort of that was our start. And that pretty much, that ANSD, you don't know what he hears. He could be hearing, could not be hearing, could be hearing one sound for another sound. You don't really know. And so you just had to wait for that to know if he's going to be deaf or not. For us, it's like, oh my God, our son is going to be deaf. But that sort of introduced us to the deaf community here in San Diego, for example. I met wonderful people. I investigated about cochlear implants, and it got me into all this world about sign language. And I started taking classes, and I made some lifelong friends in that in that community. But while I was dealing with that, then my son started about a month later, roughly, he started having his eyes started moving slightly. So my mother-in-law noticed that, because his son, my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, he had also he had a condition, and as far as we knew at the time, his condition was cerebral palsy. That's all we knew. It was cerebral palsy. We didn't know that there was this condition or anything hereditary, nothing. So we knew her it's cerebral palsy, and like, oh my goodness, Leo has something similar to our to his uncle. And his eyes are moving very similar to what he happened to be in young. But I like, you know what? Well, fine. He has probably a nerve thing with his hearing, and now probably it's affecting his eyes. And so we were dealing with that. That time, a month later, after Leo was born, we found these two issues. My other son, Carlos, is jumping around playing with Thomas the Train. He was 4 years old at the time. And he was playing, and all I hear is a thump and a scream. And my daughter comes running, say, "Hey, Carlitos fell, and he hurt his legs." And so I come down, like, he was always very rambunctious, always running around the house, bumping his head on the walls. He's always very with a lot of energy. So I like every other time, hey, just get up and sit down and you'll be good with a little later. But what I noticed is that 3 hours later, he was still sitting down, and he did not want to be touched or moved. And so I was like, well, that's kind of strange. So I kept him at home. I gave him medicine. Next day, I take him to urgent care. And it turns out that there they did some x-rays at urgent care, and they said that everything was fine. But I get home 3 hours later, they called me and say, your son, we looked at the x-rays again, and your son seems to have tumors in his legs. And so what do you mean bone tumors? And so then that opened a whole new Pandora's box. Right now, I got to go investigate this. I was dealing with hearing loss, deafness, and then a tumor in his bones.
Wow.
That led me to going to ERs and looking at orthopedic doctors, and finally getting a diagnosis for polystotic fibrous dysplasia, which means he has a disease that where he's found this particular condition in multiple parts of his body, 2 femurs and his arm. In his case, it's one in maybe, like most rare diseases, they don't agree on what the percentage of cases, but they range from 1 in 30,000 to 300,000 to 1 in 500,000. So it sort of ranges. There's monostotic, 1 bone, polyostotic, multiple bones, and there's McCune-Albright, which is when it's in your blood. And it becomes, you get other spots and endocrine issues and other issues. And he's been tested, and apparently he doesn't have that other one, even rare disease, but he does have polyostotic. So that was a whole adventure that we had to do there. And then Leo, after dealing with that nystagmus thing, we said, you know what, let's take him to a neurologist. And we made an appointment with a neurologist. And there she told us, your son has hypotonia. He's hypotonic. You're like, oh, hypotonic. What do you mean is hypotonic? And so we need to do some blood tests, some MRIs, but we got to wait a few months, maybe 5 months or 6 months for the MRI for his brain and myelin to grow, right? And then we'll do an MRI then. So they'll start it with a blood test. And so right about after the blood test, weeks later, the nurse calls me and says that they needed to do the blood test again, because there was an issue that was not understood, or was came out strange, and so they needed to do it again. I said, what do you mean strange? What do you mean, what happened? So she said, you know what? No, just come back to the appointment. And I said, okay, I'll go to the appointment, but tell me what was strange. What did you find? Oh, you wouldn't understand. We found that he has something appeared in the protolipid protein 1 gene. That's all she said. PLP. So I said, okay. So I wrote it down. I wrote it down, prolipid protein, and I had my appointment a week later with the follow-up to tell me what's going on. But I shouldn't have Googled. So I Googled.
Yeah.
It was my ex, right? My the X marks the spot. I Googled and I searched, and it's sort of Pelizaeus Merzbacher. That's what came back. And I looked at all the symptoms, and they were my son. They were exactly like my son were. So that's how I found out. I was like, I'm 99% sure this is what he has. I didn't tell my wife. I held on that for 4 or 5 days. It was on a Friday, so that weekend I was like, the more you read, the more you read, the more it scares you, because it's very scary to be reading the consequences of this particular disease of ataxia and not being able to walk and paraplegic, and all these words start coming into view. I go to the doctor, and our amazing doctor, she has 40 years of experience here, some Dr. Henry Children's, and she tells me she looked very concerned, her face, and she said, can you please sit down? And I said, you know what, I don't need to sit down, and you're going to tell me that my son has PMD. And she's like, how did you know? And so she didn't have to tell us, I told her. And then my wife turns around and like, how do you know?
Yeah.
And so I was focused. I'm an engineer, I'm a data guy, so I was focused. I had done my research through the weekend, had a lot of questions, but suffice to say, I was just focused on trying to get as much information as I could from her. And my wife, I think that all she heard was PMD, can't walk, short, possibly short lifespan. Take care, love them, and there's no cure. That's really that's she heard, and it's rough. It's a rough pill to swallow. I mean, when you are supposed, they say that parents are not supposed to bury their sons. It should always be the other way, and also to be confronted with this news that there's a high possibility that you will end up burying your son. You're going to be part of this other community later on in life, right? Of parents that lose their children. It's like, what do? You especially when they say no cure, there's no one to turn around to for help. There's no no treatments. There's no take this pill and it'll all be better. It'll go away. No, it'll just progress. So this particular condition, PMD, the way it works is like we all have our entire body is connected through nerves, and these nerves have through the central nervous system. They all have a myelin, basically a sheath that covers the nerve, and that's to help a signal traverse from one point to the next, go from point A to point B without any noise getting injected into it, like any electrical wire. In our son's case, this particular wire has holes in it. And so when his brain sends a signal, that signal does not get there noise free. His signal to noise ratio is horrible. And so he wants to move his arm this way, his arm will shake and it will not make the right movements to move. That means that anything that's connected to the central nervous system will be affected. So all his motor skills, in his case, he can't hold his head very well. He can't move his arms purposely. He can't walk, right? And so there's a lot of effects that come with that. In time, and we've seen it with my wife's brother. In time, he could develop, and most likely, if he lives long enough, he could develop a spinal curvature, right? And so many of these kids end up needing metal bars added to their spinal cord. So we know we've seen the progression of that particular disease, at least through the eyes of my brother-in-law, now looking back. And that's how we found out, and we're ever since we've been part of communities in Facebook, and part of the foundation, PMD Foundation. We're part of that, where I'm a board member there, and I get to listen on the on what doctors are doing, and so I connect to that. But the family community of that Paris Davos put together has been it was a godsend at the time, because you can connect to small knitted community of parents that when you there, you're new, you don't know, you get to ask questions, and what is, and they very graciously guide you through, so you makes it easy to navigate. And and they tell you, what, don't you, of course, as a parent, you have to go through that grief period. It's like your chest just compresses, is the lack of breathing, is the it's like you're thrown into deep water. You're under pressure, like a I don't know if you've ever read this the butterfly, the diving bell and the butterfly.
Yes.
So I've read the book. I had read the book before I had my children. So that reminded me how it feels. It feels like you're really deep underwater and you feel the pressure and you don't know how to get that out. So that's how it felt. So, but having these parents, and you're not walking that road alone, and others are there with you along the way. They remind you, hey, look up, look outside. You're going to miss out if you just fall into 100% despair. You can't just let yourself go like that, which is, I love your tour of Holland, which is the story of wanting a vacation. To you plan a vacation to go to Rome, maybe visit Europe, and you're going to do all these things, and then you realize, you get to the terminal, and then you realize that, hey, you're going to Holland. Like, wait a minute, I wasn't planning to Holland. I put all my savings to go somewhere else. But you end up in Holland, and then unless you realize and you walk around the towns and see, you miss the beautiful things that come with it, right? The beautiful meadows and rivers and everything else that comes with it. So I love that, the name of your podcast, by the way, and it's perfectly fitting.
Yeah, it definitely it just hit home when I thought of it. Yeah, because it's like, if you don't look around and appreciate what you have, you're gonna miss it. And the same with the kids. Like, you have to appreciate the beauty in their life, even though it's not the things that you imagined. Exactly. So taking it back to 2013, is there anything you wish you would have known at that time, before you got those diagnoses, or at the time?
On the one hand, I would say yes. I wish I would have known. We carried in this case, my wife had carried a condition. It wouldn't necessarily change the fact that if we had gotten pregnant and my son, I would have known that there's a possibility my son came with this particular condition. I still would have loved to had him and love him and be part of his life. But it would be good. In this case, my daughter has that knowledge. My daughter has not been tested. I don't know if she has a condition or not. Time will tell. But at least the information and the knowledge is there, and there's she will live her life according to that knowledge, something that we didn't get to have. So other than that, I think if we were to tell myself my thing, how many years has it been? 8 years. Years ago self, it's like, I would tell myself everything's going to be all right, things are going to work out, the sun is going to come up the next day, and your children will laugh, and your children will have fun, and you will hug them and love them, and you have family parties, and you will go and exercise and do all this other stuff. Not to worry, that things will some way, somehow, they will work out. I would say pray and never let go of faith, because when the world has no answers, sometimes as at least in my case, when everybody, you need to look for something, right? For some it might be exercise and health, and I actually suggest that exercise and health it's in meaning, and I went through that myself. Prayer is another, meditating might be another for others. but having that something else to hold on to as you walk in this life is going to be very important. You can't just focus only on that disease, right? Yes, take your time and learn about your condition, because you're going to be advocating for your kid's life for the rest of your life. So having that time in which you're fully concentrated on learning, take as much knowledge as you can, because that's going to be very important when dealing with doctors and decisions that need to be made. But also once that period is done, enjoy your life, enjoy your family, enjoy your if you're married and you have a partner, make that relationship as tight as possible, and focus on that as well, because what I've seen is that we all have, at least I had my I would call them my troughs of sorrow, like a pendulum. We all go down, and sometimes I'm excellent, and sometimes it goes down. And hopefully when you have a partner, that's why something's important to have a partner in this walk. Because sometimes when I'm down, she's not down, right? She's high, and she can help me drag me up again. Say, hey, remember, Carlos, we've been through this, we're going to be okay. And then when the vice versa happens, I'm there. Hopefully I'll be on my high, and I can say, hey, let's do this. You can do it. And I can bring her up on those troughs of sorrow that we sometimes go through. But I would say everything will be okay. Everything will work out. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a good message for your past self and for other people maybe first getting their diagnosis right now and listening to this. So that's good advice. Could you tell me your favorite memory of each of the boys?
Favorite memory of each of the boys. Carlitos, my favorite memory is him after when he was going to surgery. I was very worried. I was very concerned. You never want to see your sons going to surgeries. Carlos has had 9 surgeries, eight or 9 surgeries already. They put rods and so in his bone, in the middle of his bone. So every few years, because he grows, you have to change that rod, right? So you gotta keep having surgeries. So it's at about 8 or 9 already. But the first one, he told me, I said I was not brave on that surgery. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to surgery. It's going to be put on anesthesia. You see him, he's going to go. So, but I didn't hide. He was 5 years old, and I didn't necessarily hide anything from him. Hey, you're going to go through this. I will always be very forthcoming with him. But then he turns around, and I inside was anxious. I was nervous. He turns around and said, don't worry, Dad, I'll be brave. And that's one of my favorite stories, right? Like, I'll be brave. And that sort of says, you know what, if he can be brave and he's the one in pain, I can be, probably not as brave as him, but I'll try to be just as close to it, right? He can't see me break down. So that's one of my favorite stories of him. And Leo, Leo has so many. He's he one of the ones that I love is there's a story. I don't know if you heard of that story of Irma I have even wrote it here, Bombeck. Yeah. And there's a part of it when we knew that when we thought he was going to be deaf, we thought, well, we'll never hear his voice, right? We'll never hear him say mom ever. And then there's, I'm going to read it. I have another monitor here. And there's a portion here that says, yes, here's a woman whom I will bless with a child less than perfect. She doesn't realize it yet, but she's to be envied. She will never take for granted a spoken word. She will never consider a step ordinary. When her child says mommy for the first time, she will be present at a miracle and will know it. And so that's probably my favorite story. When we had gone through so much in Leo, we didn't know if he was going to speak, and obviously later we know he wouldn't walk. But we were at different doctors' offices, and we were staying at a friend's house in San Francisco, because I took my kids, I took them to see a White Matter clinic at San Francisco in Lucille Packard, and there my wife was playing with him on the floor, and Leo turns around and says, mommy. Oh, it was the most beautiful thing. It was I love him actually saying those words. And it just so happens I was videotaping my wife at that time, playing with him. when he said mommy, and my wife started choking, right? And she goes, mommy, say it again, say mommy. And he repeated it, mommy. So that means like he can hear and he can mimic words. His words are definitely not perfect. You can't have a whole conversation, but he can tell you general what he wants. He can say water, I want a bath, I want my Nintendo Switch, which he loves now to play his Nintendo Switch with the games. And so knowing that moment, knowing that we will be able to at least hear him and he will be able to convey some level of messages to us, it was one of my favorite moments.
Definitely. Oh my gosh. How lucky that you caught it on camera.
Yeah.
That's cool.
His first word.
You have to back that up everywhere. Never lose that. I love those memories. Is there anything that you would like people to know about your kids?
I think like any other parent, right? They're not, they're happy. They're happy kids. They do live with certain struggles, but those struggles don't make them, they're not Carlos, the kid with this disease, or Leo, the kid with this disease. No, they are Leo and Carlos, rambunctious kids that with a lot of energy, kids that love to read books, that loves to play Minecraft games, kids that love to watch. For example, Carlos, who says he wanted to be a scientist, a meteorologist, and he loves to see things on the sky and watch the stars. And so, and Leo, my goodness sake, his has like all parents, his laughter fills our room, but more than anything, he has this dark sense of humor. And he loves to see, those comedies that where comedians go and get hurt, and it's laughing. It's funny because there's this comedy that's very physical comedy. He loves that. He loves to know that you're mad at him. If you tell him that you're mad at him because he did something wrong, that cracks him up.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Right? That's so true, right? That cracks him up, and he's like, and I'm like, no, you should not be doing that. And the more he laughs, and I'm so mad. Why did you do this? But then, I mean, it takes time to then realize, you know what? Now, I mean, I started to realize that they can be the typical Dennis the Menace of the house, right? They can create the same things that my other kids can. And for him, those little things of maybe grabbing where I'm changing diapers, which is something that we do. We're diaper changing. I'm diaper changing for many, many years from here on. Him grabbing a piece of clothing from the bed while I'm changing him and throwing it, or for him, it cracks him up if I get angry that he's doing that. And so now I have to look for ways to entertain him. And like, you know what, Leo, count to 10. Let's see who can do faster. You counting to 10 or me changing your diaper? So I look for ways to keep him entertained, or I say, you know what? Remember when we went to Hawaii? Grab your hands, and how do you play when you're in Hawaii? How are you resting in the beach? And he puts his hands in the back. And so now I'm like, okay, I kept his hands occupied, right? So I'm changing diapers quickly. So you get this little moments, right? And even within this time, so like, man, I'm changing. My son is 8 years old. He's only 30 pounds. There's all these things going on, and yet there's interaction with his kids. You still have these funny moments, this moments when I carry him and he comforts me, right? He's hugging me, he's giving me kisses on my neck, and he's very lovable at the same time. But there's all these moments, right, as a parent that are just beautiful with his kids. And so yes, they're not just their disease. They are persons of themselves with their own ideas, with their own humor, and so they're beautiful souls.
Sounds like it. Do you feel like either of them have a superpower?
Oh, say Leo's superpower is to I think I would say to comfort us when things look bleak. It only takes a smile from him, a thing that says, you know, I'm here, I'm fine. Why are you so worried about? Right? If you can't control it, why worry? Right? If you can't change it, why worry? And all it takes is him a smile, a smirk, a sometimes even he does say it. He says, "I love you." So even just him saying that, it just melts me. So he has a power to melt me. and then um, Carlos is a smart boy. He internalizes everything, and he's very sharp. He's very well. He has a very quick. He's quick-witted. Is that the right way to say it? It's my Spanish sometimes gets in the way when I speak. He has
Sounds
a
great.
very fast ways of answering, and so he can be down and he can just tell you something and he starts cracking up. So I think both of them are get us to smile. So their powers are making us smile. Then my daughter is just another very strong personality and very caring. Um, I think her superpower is going to be she's going to be speaking for those that don't speak for themselves. I think she's going to be an advocate for those. So
it's a good skill to have.
Yeah.
Do you have any big lessons that you've learned from parenting you'd like to share?
Big lessons. With it's I sometimes think about in parenting, there's always like the next mountain you need to climb, right? There's always a mountain, and with special needs, there always seems to be another mountain that comes right after that one. Sometimes I feel like I'm trapped in like fractal art. It never ends. But part of that is I always gotta remember that my marriage to my wife, that in order to have happy kids and to have healthy kids and to know that the kids are growing up with love and care, they don't have to worry, right, themselves, because they have their own things to worry about their own lives. I have to have a good marriage with my wife, and so we try to work on that. And I think parenting starts with a good marriage. Good parenting also starts with a good marriage. If this is your family, have a partner that you're connected with, so that love that you share with your partner, if it's, hopefully you can not always works, and it's not a perfect, I'm not perfect, I am not a saint, I am not special. It's something that you have to work on every day, and hopefully remember, hey, I gotta work, we gotta put time for ourselves, because if we do, that'll translate to good parenting for your kids. We will not be as angry all the time. We will not be speaking to them in a bad manner. Not like we don't do it. We sometimes do have faults, and we end up being short fused. But always try to remember that, hey, focus on this, and that will also carry on with your kids. I think that's my would be my advice for whether it's special needs kids or not. Right? I think it carries through. And with special needs, I think it's not I don't think myself as anything special. I think that you are given something right in front of you, and you have no other choice but to take the bull by the horns and run with it. And then that's it. There's no, you have to learn as you go. In some way, somehow, people will come. I would say at least making those connections and talking about it, that has helped. And you just have to, we have no other choice. I don't know how else to say it. You have no other choice. And there's that love that emanates from you having these kids. It changes you in a way, right? It changes specifically this particular set of kids. I mean, I have my other kids, my kids, I would say, with my Samantha, and even Carlos, even though he has his special needs. But they will, I know they themselves, I'm just teaching them as best as I can to be independent, to grow, and to at some point leave the nest. That's really where my goals are, right? And hopefully give them enough morals and values for them to carry forward, right? And then they'll make their bed. But with Leo, I know he will stay with me. Hopefully, my prayers always is he better stay with me until the end of his life, right? I ask, what I pray for is, God, don't take me before my son, right? Take him first, even though it sounds strange. But it's like, take him first, because I wouldn't want to leave him here without me. And so I know how to take care of him, how to, and I think that's the only thing. And any changes, you knowing that you are responsible for this person for the rest of his life, for advocating for, you have to become his hands, his legs, his mouth, his voice, everything. And there's no other way. You cannot be more humbled by that, putting somebody else's life in your lap, and now you go take care of it forever, from the first breath to hopefully the last breath. And so, and I'm sure, at least on other parents that that know I'm talking about, that have these kids that could possibly, right? Unless there's a cure. I mean, throughout, I will not stop fighting. I always tell my wife, we're at a time of war, and we're at war with this disease, and I want a cure. And even if my son doesn't get to be the one that the cure helps in time, maybe the next parent will, and that's a consolation for all of us. So we definitely want to get to a cure, and if it helps him live a life in which it doesn't need a G-tube, it doesn't need a tracheotomy, if it doesn't need later maybe a metal rods put, anything like that will be great. But in the meantime, I would want that I would want him, if he can't live a life and he's gonna pass away, and then get his PMD get worse and worse in time, I want to live enough years so I can take care of him.
Definitely.
Well, very long answer. I don't know if I even answered your question, but
it's good. No, it's good. We covered a couple topics there, but it was a good transition. How do you think that parenting Leo and Carlos and Samantha have changed you as a person?
That's what you say. So cover that. It's like I said earlier. It's I think they made me more humble, right? I would say that I was more prideful. I thought that I knew everything. I like, hey, I went to college. I know all these things, and I'm having a great job, and people might respect me and all this. So I might have felt too prideful, I guess that's the word, or too.
It's a word, yeah.
But through going through this, they made me realize that no, I mean, yes, I'm not a person. I tell my kids, don't necessarily stay in a comfort zone, always push yourself, always do better, always be better, initially for yourselves, for your family, for that community, but always try to be a better person. But that pride, I don't know, is chipped away. Now I'm more humble and more I would say I internalize more of other people's sufferings, I would say,
more compassionate.
And more compassionate. I think that comes. So I think that's the biggest change, at least in my life. And then the other one is, you know what, they want me to be better as a person, but even not just emotionally, not just as like that, but also I want to be healthier. I wanna have good health. I wanna physically be strong. And so that's also a change. Before I wasn't as connected to that, and then this will happen, and at some point, like, I better exercise. I better start doing something. And so
that's just a practical piece of it. So you can, if you're caregiving later in your years, that you can still do it physically, still feel good.
That's feel really good. Yeah, and it helps you.
Yeah, it helps you mentally 100%, but it's like not to be neglected, because you have to like have that long-term view for the future. I agree. Yeah, I've always done it for mental health, but then this is a whole other layer, right? So speaking about that, what do you have any thoughts on the future and anything you're looking forward to in particular?
In the future, I'm looking forward I would like to see, especially for both Carlos and Samantha to accomplish whatever it is that they want to accomplish in life. I want to see them, for them in particular, right? For them to, if it is a family that they want, to be able to accomplish those dreams. If it is a marriage, to be able to accomplish this. If it is schooling, right, and graduating and working, also, I want their dreams, whatever those dreams end up becoming, for them to accomplish those. And I want for them to look back in the future, their time at home with us, to look it up as, you know what, my parents did their best. They tried. We lived a happy life given the circumstances, and to reflect back on their lives with us as happy times in their lives. And then for me and my wife in the future, it's yes, in fact, I want to travel with my kids. I want to travel more. Hopefully these things will clear up a little bit, but I want to travel with Leo and with my kids, and I want him to see the world, right? I would like to go to Europe with him, and go to South America with him, and do stuff that they can see the beauty of the world, the beauty of nature, the beauty of people. And so that's what I would like to have, the means and the ability, and the will and strength to be able to do all of that with them. At the end, it's moments. It's not whether I give them this or that. It's not the money that oh, I gave you a pair of headphones or an iPhone or something. It's if I can have moments, those moments in time where all of us, my kids and myself, were enjoying those moments and really capturing those moments, and be able to build a lot of those moments in our lives. That's really what I would like for our future. Have enough moments.
I think that's really insightful. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun on all those adventures.
We'll see.
Yeah. Are there any resources that have helped you as your family along the way of this journey?
Well, there's several. There's obviously resources for resources in terms of governmental resources, like health and services resources. Those are always very helpful. Anything has been very, very useful. And there's a program called Hope that we had here in San Diego. Hope program for very young kids, like infants at that time. And that program, when our kids when Leo was diagnosed with deafness, they sent a pair of wonderful service providers, I would say, Jessica, and I can't believe I forgot his name. If he sees it, he's not gonna be happy with me. But there were these two wonderful people that I think at the time they came to our life when we needed them the most. They came and they interacted with Leo, with us. They were teaching us sign language. And in fact, I created a page, Loving Leo, that I've stopped writing on for a while. But in it, I was trying to record the things that happened from the beginning. So I wouldn't forget. Because I did not want to forget what decisions I made, what happened, how things happened. And there was a video that we made for called Home, of a song, and we did all the lyrics of that song with sign language, and we got family members and myself and even my brother-in-law at the time, who was still alive at that point, passed away 4 years ago, signing the words of the song. And these people sort of helped us do that. But it brought a sense of community, of fun, of things that we needed right in those first year of life, right? And so those are things that helped us along the way. Then later, obviously, there's the community of doctors, amazing doctors, both Rady Children's and Lucille Packard in San Francisco, researchers that made studies on my kids for their to study their disease. We keep in contact with them. And then there's the part of the community, Facebook communities, have been very, very useful. I ended up going to Indianapolis in 2014. I met a lot of parents there, about 20 to 25 parents with kids with special needs, similar, well, the same as Leo. And I went by myself. I couldn't take Leo at the time. I think because I was dealing with Carlitos surgeries and stuff, so I couldn't go. And in that community, it's seeing the parents face to face, meeting other kids. It was I don't know. It puts together your heart. It's something you feel like it's crumbling. Well, how can I do it? And then you see all these parents, and they were not sad. That's the thing. I did not see sad parents. I did not see parents weeping about their son's condition. Quite the contrary. I see parents loving their kids, enjoying their kids, going out to the ball game, going to dinner, all talking to each other in the same wavelength and language, and we're all speaking the same things, right? And helping with tips and stuff. So that, seeing them there and then be able to communicate with them through a Facebook community has been a wonderful help. And then there's the foundation itself, which gives you another opening into the world of doctors, of science, of research. That also has been very helpful. And I also have a community of warriors called FD Warriors, Fibrous Dysplasia Warriors, for my other son, who also I met other lifelong friends in that community as well, of parents and kids with similar disease as my son, and so that happened. So yes, I think it's all of those are helpful resources.
Thank you. I'll make all those available in the show notes for anyone who wants more information. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't had a chance to cover yet?
How can I say this? There is, on the other page, on the other question, there's mm-hmm. also a thing that I signed up my kids for called I Run for Michael. It's a group in Facebook that they sign up runners with kids. They pair them, and these runners, they run for your kids. They run marathons. They're part of the running community, but they run on behalf of your kids. And then they send them medals at points, right? They send medals, they send them messages. Right? We want this medal. So he has a few of the medals that they've gotten, right, for different marathons that they run, or they exercise. Hey, I'm doing an exercise. I did all these exercises for you, 100 push-ups, and how was your day? And so there's this community of a person, right, that is always thinking and doing these exercises for your kids. It's called I Run for Michael. Carlos is paired with a lady, wonderful lady from Baltimore, Katie. Mm-hmm. And then Leo is paired with someone from Akron, Ohio, Rachel. And they've also been lights in their lives, right? In our lives, because they are always connected. Hey, how are your kids doing? And hey, I run this. And so always put a smile on our faces, right? Seeing that, all of that helps. So reaching out to all these things are very helpful.
I'm going to check that out. That sounds really cool. And I hadn't heard of it before. Cool. Thank you. Well, I don't have any other questions for you, Carlos. I really appreciate your time today. I loved hearing more about your boys and your daughter and your whole family. And thank you for sharing your story with us.
No, thank you for contacting me. Thank you for reaching out. And I think these stories and many other stories I'm not the only one. There's 7,000 rare diseases out there. And there's even more other diseases, kids that are living with many conditions, not just ours, right? That are good to show to the world. And I think our families and kids that are living through this, right? Hey, don't despair, right? Mm-hmm. There's hope. I think hope is a big message in our lives, right? Hope, that there's hope for a better tomorrow, for a better day. Hope is what gets you moving forward and taking the next step. I mean, as part of this community, I met kids with deaf kids, like children that the other children can't walk. Other parents of kids of my friends here that have kids with leukemia, that were born that they found out they had leukemia and they're battling that. there's another cousin of my wife was as a kid with Down syndrome, similar age. Another cousin of my son Leo that ended up getting also PMD. He has a cousin that's 3 months older than Leo that lives in San Diego that also has PMD. They go to school together. So that's and so you might want to reach out to her.
Oh yeah, I'd like that.
And so they have their own stories, right? Their own way of how they determined and how they found out that their kid was also with this particular condition. So but you get to see a plethora of many families with many different diseases. I put my kids out in a baseball challenge, baseball, right, for the challenge league, right in front of my house, and I get to meet other parents. So building that community of parents with, regardless of disease, even though they're not the same disease as my kid, we all seem like we look at each other and like we know what you're going through. We know we're just hanging there. Anything you need, just call, right?
You're in a club, I think.
Yeah, we're in a club. Yes.
Yeah, we get it. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Carlos. I'll let you get back to your day, and we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
All right, we'll keep in touch. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.